Hello, my name is Kaydance Levesque. I'm an undergrad at the University of Washington. I'm majoring in environmental science and minoring in American Indian Studies. I was a part of the cohort for the Summer Indigenous Institute in Humanities, led by our resident aunties, Jessica and Polly. So we went through our intro, and I'll start with our C presentation, which led into ticks, which I'll explain later. And then our Burke Meadow team will take over, and then our Earth Oven project will speak. So place-based knowledge. We had many teachers over the course of C, one including Owen Oliver, who came and gave us a personalized tour of his Indigenous walking tour, which he created while he was a student here at the University of Washington. We were able to get a more Indigenous-focused, Indigenous-centered tour from him, because typically it's retired white folk that he takes on the tours, which is a little bit of a different narrative that he tries to focus on. And so we got to talk a little bit more about the politics of the places that are on the tour. Here we have Polly in front of the SIIH mural, which is located in Miller Hall in the Quad. And it's a Yakama story about Mother Cedar and a very important teaching. And Owen Oliver also focused on land acknowledgements. The key aspects are location, place names, native people, language, continuity, relationship, and time. Aaron McKenna, Yupik and Mexican descent, also shared with us his hope for decolonizing academic spaces within the Burke. And I, as an environmental science major, plan to use this research as a tool for furthering decolonization efforts. As he says, decolonization is the future. Tammy Hone, who is a professor at the University of Washington who teaches wǝጡ, dedicates so much of her time to cultural revitalization. Language is such a strong connection to who we are and where we come from. She really inspires me and many others to learn our native languages. Our berry relatives. That picture is salal, which was one of the berries that we harvested at the Burke Meadow, along with huckleberry. It's very important to connect with our plant relatives, and so we were harvesting with our hands, making sure that we got all those good berries, staining our fingers. It's very much a reciprocal relationship with the berries. We make sure to thank them for their subsistence. And while we were harvesting berries, this is how we came up with our creation story of ticks. Someone saw a bug that they thought looked like a tick, and then Auntie Polly so graciously reminded us that there are not ticks in Washington, at least not this urban area, but we still were quite freaked out, and ticks became a sort of symbol for us. And so we came up with the acronym TICS to describe our cohort. And then later on with Terry Maresca, which is featured in that photo on the right, we made jams out of the berries that we harvested. It was such an amazing experience to work in the Washoe kitchen and make jams and listen to music and sing and dance with everyone. She really encouraged participation from everyone in order to teach us. It very much reminded me of my own grandmother and how she would make sure that I was doing the work and not just sitting there watching her. Our dogwood and willow relatives. On the left there, you can see us harvesting willow. That's also on UW campus. Almost all of our harvesting occurred on the UW campus. It was really an amazing process to harvest, process everything, and see our creations through. During SIIH, we were really able to connect with our plant relatives. It was funny being in the willow, because it's on a main road, and so passerbys would ask us what we were doing and say, "Oh, that's an interesting project." But yeah, we ended up processing the willow and making a fence along the Burke Meadow path in order to guide people away from the grassy meadow to protect our plant relatives. And I'm going to pass it over to, we're going to talk about dogwood.
Hi, my name is Kylee. I am an ecology major here and an AIS minor. My family is Tlingit and Swinomish, and I first heard about the Summer Institute of Indigenous Humanities, or SIIH, through a listserv, and I immediately disregarded it because in my mind I was a STEM major first, not a humanities major. But it was actually Jessica who then emailed me personally and was like, "You should apply for this." So I did, even though in her arts and aesthetics class, I very much struggled because it was very humanities based and very based in methodology of using arts as research and understanding our world. And that wasn't something I had a lot of experience with. But I applied, and I am really grateful that I did because, as Kaydance was saying, we've made so much community through SIIH. We now have a bunch of on-campus aunties. I've met a lot of friends through this, and I continue to make new connections through this. And one of the connections we were able to make is, as Kaydance was talking about, we got to harvest willow and then weave some fences in the Burke Meadow. And then as a continuation of the work with the Burke Meadow team, we were also able to harvest dogwood and weave a nice little basket here for our camas. So we got to do a lot of the prepping and the weaving during the workshop. I also was fortunate enough to work with the Society for Ecological Restoration at UW, and I harvested a lot of the dogwood in Tikva's garden, which is an ongoing project. I had so much fun with that. I've continued to volunteer and work with them in their restoration of that area. But yeah, like Kaydance was saying, we got to do a lot of weaving with willow. We also got to work with dogwood, which was really fun. And our next relative we got to work with is cedar. And cedar, I particularly enjoyed working with. Cedar's a relative that connects a lot of communities, including Tlingit and Swinomish. So I really enjoyed learning from our teachers with cedar. We had Laura Pennington, McKenna, and also Sophia. So these are some of the projects we worked on. We made mini cedar baskets, which are super cute. They're like this big. With Sophia, we also made bracelets and rings. I have my ring on and my bracelet. My first bracelet, actually, it was very similar to this one. I gifted to my great-grandma, who is Tlingit, and I held on to it all the way from last summer until I got to visit her this past winter. And she got so excited that immediately she put it on and she brought out a shirt that matched the color. She said, "Oh, look, I have the perfect shirt that will match this little bracelet." And that was just really sweet to me, and it really kind of connected the work that we did back in summer to my relatives who kind of first got me into these spaces. We also made this really beautiful bracelet with McKenna. But yeah, I just really enjoyed working with cedar. We got to visit the basket collection as well and visit some of our relatives there. I really also enjoyed working with Laura. She's Upper Skagit, and as soon as she found out I was Swinomish, she decided immediately that I was her niece, so I felt very welcomed by her, and I've really enjoyed continuing to work with her. We also invited her back for the basket weaving, which was a really great experience. And then looking forward to our future projects and collaborations. The whole kind of theme throughout this is weaving, so we're weaving a lot of new projects and collaborations with new people and existing teams, including the Burke Meadow. So a lot of the work we're doing with the Burke Meadow includes caring for the meadow outside of the Burke, and they've done a lot of amazing projects. Some of the people, we've got Camille, we've got Eric, who are here to present with us today to speak a little more about that. Miguel, Jasmine, Marina, all amazing people on the Burke Meadow team that have already done so much work, and I'm so grateful that they're including us in that and that Polly's bringing us into that work, because one thing I've really enjoyed about working with C and turning into TICS is that I really got to work hands-on, which has really helped me kind of weave those connections. As an ecology student, I always knew there was connections between art and humanities and caring for the earth. But really to understand that humanities side, C has just been such a huge part of that. And understanding art as a research form and as a methodology has been such a gift, I think, in my education experience. And as a senior, I'm really glad that I got to experience that and I get to continue this work. Another big project coming up, which Johnny will talk about later, and I'm super excited about, is the Earth Oven. So Johnny is a Yakama grad student who's working in human-centered design, and he has really been a powerhouse in leading this Earth Oven project. And we're just at the start of it, but I am really excited to see what we're gonna do with that moving forward. And yeah, so that's kind of where TICS is now. I'm not sure if Kaydance said earlier, but TICS is Tribal, Indigenous, Cultural Knowledge Stewards. There we go. So that's what TICS is. And thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to pass it over to Eric and Camille, who are going to talk about some of our collaborations and work they're doing.
Hello. My name is Kate Forrest. I'm a Master's of Landscape Architecture student here at UW. I'm also Wǝጡ from Chippewa territory. From Chippewa territory in Canada, Korean Ojibwe. And then I'm part of the Meadow team as well as a partner to the TICS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Galbraith. I am part of Navarro Nation, and I'm also a Master of Landscape Architecture student in my first year. And I recently joined the Burke Meadow team over this past summer, so this is my first year on the Meadow team.
As previously mentioned, we're just a couple members of the Meadow team here today to represent a large network of people that support their Burke Meadow on this campus. Our elders are Polly Olson, Ken Yoakum, and Steve. Polly's head of decolonization for the Burke Museum. Steve is from the UW grounds, and Ken is from the College of Built Environments. These graphics represent two core principles that we bring to all of our work in the Meadow. On the right, you see our weaving methodology, which are really weaving between Indigenous and Western science, and we'll speak a bit more about this later, but how Indigenous science kind of leads our project, and Western science comes in as validation and support to help us share out the impact that bringing Indigenous science back to the campus has. And then on the other side, you can see CAIIS as the backbone of this sort of network of relationships that we're building around the Burke Meadow. And you can see the initial partnership between grounds, landscape architecture, and Polly at the Burke Museum as sort of the foundation of that, and how it's really grown to include a lot more people, including this Indigenous food family.
Yeah, so kind of hopping into this weaving methodology, not only are we weaving together systems of knowledge like Indigenous science as well as Western science, but we're also weaving together communities and places. So taking a quick look at a spatial analysis of native placemaking on campus, starting in about 2014, this very building broke ground. And then if we fast forward a little to 2018, the Intellectual House started a food program through the Native Garden, or created the Native Garden program, and established 3 separate sites, one at the UW Farm, one at Mercer Court, and then one at McMahon. So that was 2018, and then we fast forward another year, 2019, that's when the Burke Meadow really took off, and a lot of other partnerships started to happen between the Burke Museum, landscape architecture, as well as UW grounds. And then the intellectual house is still in the mix there. Now we're fast forwarding to 2025, our current time. Now we have this whole network of native space across campus, and so all of these places are woven together by, again, our Indigenous science as well as our Western science, as well as all of the stewards that help steward the space. And so this little gift will run, and I think there definitely was collaboration and stewardship of these lands before 2014, but I just want to highlight how in the past decade, how much native space has truly grown across campus and how much change can occur within that time frame. Yeah, so speaking specifically to our Burke Meadow, which again is kind of the main space that we are stewarding right now, we believe the Burke Meadow is an excellent example of decolonization, as it is flattening the hierarchies of our knowledge systems and encouraging this kind of reciprocal stewardship, as well as this continual collaboration between different communities. There are these three pillars of maintenance, monitoring, and community building, which kind of guides our work.
So a little bit of background on the Burke Meadow. It was originally built in 2019-2020, and we partnered with some nurseries to collect seeds for native plants. And when they did that, one of the seeds that they gave us was a different species of lupin, and what we expected, it was a river lupin, which is a very aggressive, establishment species. So that led to sort of take over lupin within the meadow, which was a moment for our team where the meadow really asked for care. We wanted to create this campus meadow, this space for native plants and native students on campus. This area was going to require continued stewardship and care. And then over time, you can see our activity in the meadow is kind of increased after that. And we've engaged in basket weaving. We burned the meadow for the first time this most recent winter, which was really special. And here's a little photo of what the meadow looked like, or the lupin took over. And so people are really happy with this, because gorgeous field of wildflowers, but if you're trying to bring native foods and native plants back to campus, the lupin really wasn't going to bring any of that. So that's kind of the impetus for the consortium that we have. And it was really what we view as kind of a moment where we had to recognize that the land is asking for care, and if we want to create a space that for native food and native students, we were going to need to care for this land and create a network of care. And so part of that network is sharing out what we do to support other people who would like to do similar work. And one way we do that is through pocket sampling and regular monitoring of plants that are growing within the meadow. And this is one example of some of the data analysis we've done from Western science to this end. You can see an initial high point in the diversity looking at this lupin expansion, and that's when the data was really going to be offset by this massive abundance of lupin that we had. But if you look at it beneath, you can see the detail beneath this data, which is the competitive trait with size, and the rural stress tolerance trait, the plants that really need disturbance and fire and all that kind of stuff, they weren't doing well within this context. And this most recent summer, we actually had the highest community diversity ever within the meadow, and you can see that the rural stress tolerant plants really are recruiting space for them within the meadow, and the competitor trait is sort of lower. This is one example of kind of the way that some other students have to communicate our idea, which is a visual representation of our throughout time, showing how the diversity balance is changing over that. And then back to our connection with the ticks, we also do basket weaving to hold the food that we're trying to grow in the meadow and protect it from many bodies that would love to feast on campus as well. And so this is kind of one way that's part of the meadow where we partnered with chance other Native students around campus as well as elders to come in and leave baskets to hold the campus.
Yeah, so one beautiful thing about physically weaving together is that we're weaving together a lot of different communities. And so as you can see in this picture, we have elders as well as a lot of different folks from a lot of different departments, and we are able to better communicate Indigenous knowledge to these different departments, which has been a really cool opportunity for us. So like I showed in that earlier map, we are expanding our projects out from the Burke Meadow, which will include the native garden as well as the earth oven. And yeah, we're hoping to spread the things we've learned through this process at different places, different departments. So now moving into the native garden, looking at this kind of timeline I've outlined here, back in 1617, Isakshicha Ross Brain, as well as Kamakike Natalie Bruscher, who was a student. Isakshicha was the previous director of the Intellectual House. They wanted to combat food insecurity for Native students on campus, and so they came up with the idea of the native garden. And so in 2017, I believe, that's when the first food sovereignty liaison, Sierra Redbow, was hired to kind of steward these different spaces. Again, those spaces were the UW Farm location, then the Mercer Court, as well as McMahon. And then in 2019, there was more official funding through some on-campus granting processes. And then the next two food sovereignty liaisons who continued to steward the native gardens was Magnus Jim and Sarai Meyer. In this past summer, the administrative home for the native garden shifted to the Burke Museum under our mentor, Polly Olson. And so now we are weaving another space into our project, and yeah, hoping to have some more expansion of our food sovereignty programs in the near future. Just to orient us a little bit, we are that green kind of highlight in the middle of the map there, and then the UW farm is that boot-shaped red highlight. Sorry, I don't have a pointer, but that is where we're going to be talking about for the next minute or two. So here's an aerial photo of kind of our site. As you can see, the native garden is comprised of three different parts. There's the native garden proper, which is the little number 1 there. And then there's also a pollinator hedgerow and the wǝጡ pond. And so the pollinator hedgerow was a thesis project by a non-native student, I believe. But then Sarai Meyer, the current food sovereignty liaison, was able to have a heavy hand in the planting plan. So we've kind of co-opted that space. And then the wǝጡ pond, another thesis project in which Polly Olson had donated some wǝጡ a few years ago, I believe, and then is now happily growing in the pond there. Just taking a look at this past year, these are some photos I've been taking out on the plot. We were able to grow Wolverine orchis beans over there, as well as tobacco. Tobacco was the plant relative that we stewarded the most this year. And then we also grew some hoe potatoes, which you can see as those vibrant purple circles there. And then we have little crows who join us every now and then. But, we grew a lot of tobacco this past year, and so we are in the process of processing that tobacco, inviting a community elder to join us and share some cultural knowledge around processing tobacco. And we're hoping to use this tobacco as gifts for the other stewardship projects that we're helping with, that being the Burke Meadow, as well as Tikva's Garden, where we harvest dogwood. E12 parking lot is where we get the willow from. So yeah. In this next year, this is a bit of an outdated map, but in this next year, we're kind of expanding our area. And then just to the right, that kind of dirt patch to the right of the expansion area is where we'll be hosting and building an earth oven, which Johnny will talk about in just a second for us. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Initially, so good time. So obviously, good day, you all. Amazing to be here and present. Such beautiful people. And my name is Johnny Buck. I'm Wanapum and Yakama, and currently a human-centered design engineering master's student. So I'll graduate in June. And yeah, go ahead and clap if you want. Get it over with. I just finished a 2-year tenure with the Tubman Center for Health and Freedom as a UX design manager, building a new healthcare system in the south end of Seattle. We built 2 clinics. It's a really amazing healthcare. Check it out if you get a chance. But it really allowed me to step into more of engaging here on campus in some of the projects that we have. And I ran into Polly on the light rail. She was catching a plane and I was going to work. And we're chatting, and she knows my dad because my dad was chair of the tribal board at the Burke Museum. So I knew a little bit about her also, but she goes, "Oh, we're getting like an abundance of camas and other things. What should we do with it?" I go, "Cook it in the ground, you process it." And my family grew up doing that. And so I think reclaiming fire, which is a big part of Earth Ovens, Nourishing Futures, the Earth Oven, and Gathering Space at the University of Washington. So it started with CAIIS and across the Native Garden and Native Farm at UW. Indigenous students, faculty, and knowledge holders have been tending to ancestral foods and medicines, CAIIS, fireweed, many berries, and many others. So whose return signals not just a season, but a responsibility. CAIIS is more than a plant. It is a teacher, a ceremonial food that must be cooked in the ground for 1 to 2 days, transforming through time, steam, and care. Go back to the picture. Polly in action. She got her cup in. It's a traditional digging stick. It's an amazing time space that we're in. So our vision, holding fire together, is a ceremonial space for Indigenous students and community. So the Earth Oven is envisioned as a sacred space where Indigenous students and community can gather to cook, share stories, and build connections. The space will enable the cooking of culturally significant foods. The Earth Oven will be a place where Indigenous students and community can come together to share stories, teachings, and visions for the future. And this, we're integrating the pan-Indigenous knowledge system. So there's a lot of Indigenous students here on campus, and we have a variety of methods. So one of the principles, we're going to use universal design so that all the accessibility needs to be able to cook underground at this space near the World Culinary spaces, all of those things are addressed. So our purpose is a design rooted in relationship. The project uses a human-centered design and engineering process to address the needs and the dreams of Indigenous students. The process is also grounded in Indigenous ways of knowing, using story, memory, land, fire, and food as the design tools. The design is rooted in relationships. So with the land, the community, and the stories that hold the project's foundation. One interesting fact, for some that don't know, is the area where we're going to be building and where the garden, the native garden is, and the UW farm. There were 5 longhouses there from the original peoples that lived there. And now that it's land, it used to be actually water. So there was, I think they call it the little canoe channel there. So this is nothing new that we're doing that was on that land before, so I just wanted to acknowledge and recognize that. But the Earth Oven is a ceremonial response to a cultural need for students and faculty. It's a living expression of land-based knowledge and indigenous sovereignty. So the design process supports the resurgence of traditional foods and ceremonial practices, nourishing future generations. One of the elders that we'll be working with, his name is Tanakin, coming from the Yakama Nation on the Columbia River. So he's really excited about this project, and each time I chat with him on his Facebook Messenger, he just goes off into stories, but he's really excited to share all of his teachings around this in his traditional language, and for it all to be documented and archived at the Burke Museum and the whole knowledge system, beginning with those things. So we'll be gathering stones with him. We'll do a couple of field trips. We'll collect plant materials, and then we'll also do co-design sessions with him, with students, elders, and faculty on that plot of land. And it was actually a really amazing experience when we plotted that land with Polly and Kaydance and I to stake claim to it for Indigenous students and give it blessing and really good intentions and thoughts of what was going to take place there, not only for us. It was a transformative experience, but I think thinking about like the future generations and future students that will be able to utilize that space. So we'll go through a co-design process. I just chatted mostly about that. Our guiding values and frameworks, relational design. So it's designed in relationship with land community and with story. Land-based learning integrates knowledge shared and carried through stones, plants, and the process of pit cooking. So I shared that we were already gathering some of the chemists and taking a look at it here on campus, and it was in bloom. It began flowering like a week and a half ago, and so we were digging. You saw that picture, and I was chatting with the elder, and he already knew that when he said, "Oh, that bloom, you don't gather it when it's still blooming." It's just like it's naked, right? It has no peelings yet. It needs to mature. So when it gets done blooming and the flower falls, that's when you gather it, when it seeds. So he already knew what it looked like, and even describing everything to him, he could already envision everything. It's really amazing. So the earth oven is about more than food. It's about how we remember, how we relate, how we cook into being a future that's already been dreamed. Reclaiming fire, so it's a whole decolonization process that we're taking on with a lot of love and care. Thank you.